Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. Practical spiritual insights to help you live a more joyful, empowered, and grounded life.
Let's grow together. Our guest speaker this morning is one of the practitioners here at Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. He's a happy, healthy, and active husband, father, and grandfather. He spent his first 27 years in New York City, where he attended Catholic grammar school, high school, and college. Having survived that, he began a 35-year career which started at One Wall Street in New York City and ended at U.S. Bank in Denver, Colorado. In 2003, he was exposed to Science of Mind at Mile High Church in Denver, where he took as many classes, workshops, and seminars as he could. And there he met his practitioner wife, Patrice, at one of those workshops. He became a licensed prayer practitioner in 2016 after 5 years of dedicated study. And of course, he's now an active practitioner here at Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. So, sit back, relax, and prepare to take in the wisdom of Edgar Rivera.
Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good. I know this is going to work anytime now. Can you hear me all right? Is this working? You know, there it is. I just knew as I was preparing this talk that there's going to be some challenges this morning, and lo and behold, there was. Has it ever happened to you? Have you ever thought, I'm going to have some challenges, and then you did? On the other hand, have you ever thought everything's going to work out really, really well? And it did. Can it be as easy as what Jesus has said? It is done unto you as you believe. Is that really possible? Is it really that simple? Well, scientists have said that the universe has existed for 13.8 billion years, and it all came about as a result of the Big Bang. What happened before the Big Bang? What existed before the Big Bang? Nothing, right? Nothing, except God. God who always was, who always is, who always will be. God who is everywhere in all of its entirety, all at the same time. And where did the universe come from? How did the divine come up with the universe? How did he create the universe? Created it from its own mind, its own thoughts. It's kind of like everything is created twice. First in mind, then in thoughts. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, he said that to learn to think is to learn how to live. For our thoughts go into a creative medium that is infinite in its ability to do and to be. Man and woman. Remember, Ernest Holmes was writing around the turn of the last century, the early 1900s. And so at that time, it was all just men that existed. Women didn't exist. Anyway, so he continued saying, and I'll try to translate it into our current situation. Men and women, by thinking, can bring into their experience whatever they desire, if they think correctly and become living embodiments of their thoughts. And then in his book, Creative Minds, he goes on to say that each soul must discover for himself or herself that they stand in the midst of an eternal creative power which presses itself around their thoughts and casts back to them glorified all that they think. So how do we do this? Well, First, let me tell you about an experience I had driving home a few weeks ago after a service. I was driving alone that day, and so on the way home, I put on my earbuds, and I decided to call my best friend, Rick Beidro. And so I call him, and we're talking, and he's telling me that he had just finished rereading again, a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he said, so many things in this book are similar to other things that I have read, and movies that I've seen, like The Secret. Are you familiar with that? And I said, yeah, I'm familiar with those. As a matter of fact, when I was living in Denver, I had the opportunity to meet both authors and to attend lectures that they gave. So I felt very, very fortunate. So he said, do you believe that stuff? I said, of course I do. And then he said, so Edgar, why aren't you more successful? What? I may have said a little bit more in my mind than what. and then I started thinking, I was stopped at a light. I started thinking all the things, all the ways that I've been successful in my life. And then I started thinking, but, I could be more financially free. I could have better relationships. I could be less judgmental. I could be, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute, Rick is right. I haven't been, if I know all that stuff, why haven't I been more successful? And then I meekly told Rick, the reason why is because I haven't consistently applied everything that I know. Rick and I talk a lot. And we discuss a lot of things. And then there'll be a question that comes up that neither of us know. And so I'll say to him, let me check with Mr. Know-It-All. And so I'll check on my phone and I'll find out the information that we're looking for. And the phone, I've come to rely on it. Whatever I check, whenever I'm looking for information, it gives me the answer. Okay, most of the time. Could spirit be just like our phone? Could spirit be there? Has the answers. It's just waiting for us to phone home. Quite possibly. And will spirit always answer every single time? And the answer is yeah, absolutely. And spirit is kind of like the genie. It says, your wish is my command. What do we think about? Remember again, everything is created twice. First in our minds, first in our thoughts, then in the material world. So that Sunday, pardon me, I already told you all that wonderful stuff about Rick and how we utilize our phone. So again, how do we, if we know all this knowledge, how do we really utilize it? How do we make it a part of our life? And I think we marinate in that knowledge that we have. We marinate all the time in that spiritual soup that we have. I grew up hearing a phrase, and maybe some of you heard it too. It's 3 words, and help me complete it. If you're at home, shout it out loud. If you're here, shout it out loud. Knowledge is power. Everybody knows that. Knowledge is power, right? Well, I grew up hearing that my whole life. And so I looked it up. Where does that date back to? It dates back to the late 1500s, early 1600s. And Sir Francis Bacon, he was the first one that said knowledge is power. And it emphasizes that having knowledge gives one influence and authority. Well, from the time we start gaining knowledge, we're little kids. And we learn how to crawl, how to walk, how to talk. We learn what's acceptable to our parents We learn what's acceptable to society, and we learn what's not. Don Miguel Ruiz, he wrote the Four Agreements. He calls that our domestication. And that's part of what we are all given as blessings or things to work with. There's a part, after hearing something over and over and over again, we start believing it. As a matter of fact, there's a part of our brain, it's called the reticular activation system. And it allows information to seep deeper into our subconscious if we believe it. So it's information that we've heard over and over again, or we've experienced over and over again, and we just know that it's true, and the reticular activation system says, yep, it's true, you can continue. On the other hand, if we hear something that doesn't agree with our beliefs, the reticular activation system stops it. It says, no, don't go any further. That doesn't make any sense. So it's a gatekeeper. We may have grown up hearing, we've grown up hearing a lot of things. I grew up hearing, perhaps you have, money doesn't grow on trees. Well, duh, of course it doesn't grow on trees. But what did that do? That gave us the impression that money is limited. We may have grown up hearing, I'm not worthy, or I'm too fat, or I'm too skinny, or I'm too tall, or I'm too short, or I'm too dumb, or I'm too whatever. What have you grown up, what false beliefs have you grown up hearing that you've believed? On the other hand, have you been lucky enough to hear positive things when you're growing up? You're so smart. You're so beautiful. You're so talented. You're so knowledgeable. Whatever it is. And do you believe those? And so does that rule your life? Whatever it is that we have grown up hearing, those items kind of rule our lives. And we're not even aware of that. But they do. They become habits. And we accept them. I spent my first 27 years in New York City. I'm so grateful for all the experiences that I've had, especially those in New York City. And one afternoon, I'm walking in Midtown Manhattan, along with a few hundred of my friends, and I'm approaching the corner. And as I'm approaching the corner, I see some guy carrying a violin case. And I catch up, I'm right behind him, and I hear him asking the woman next to him, can you tell me how I can get to Carnegie Hall? And the woman, she's a New Yorker, and all New Yorkers are very, very helpful folks. And if you that's not a joke, I'm a New Yorker, really, New Yorkers are helpful. Anyway, the woman turns to him and says, yes, practice, practice, practice. So that's how you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. Here's another experience that I had when I was living in Denver, Colorado. I had my driveway where I parked the car right next to the house. I would get into my car going to work in the morning, and then I would remember while I'm in my car, I forgot something. And so I'd run into my house. Usually I'd cuss. And then I'd run into my house and I'd get that. And then after a while, I realized, wait a minute, what's going on? And so I changed. I decided to say thank you every time I remembered in my car something that I needed that was still in my home. Who was I saying thank you to? Well, I was looking up and saying thank you to God. Why do we look up when we talk to God or talk about heaven up there? It's because it's that higher vibration. So we just automatically, not even thinking about it, we just look up. After a while of doing this, I started saying thank you to myself for remembering. And what I did then, after a while, was I changed two habits. I stopped that cussing and putting myself down. And by the way, after doing this a while, I kind of stopped forgetting things at home, and things just came with me all the time. So let's get... Bear with me. Let's get back to that saying, knowledge is power, right? We've all grown up hearing that knowledge is power, knowledge is power. Baloney! I heard that from Tony Robbins decades ago. He was the first one that I ever heard that from. Knowledge is not power. Power is your ability to use the knowledge that you have. So, if you all want to be more powerful, all of us, let's start utilizing the knowledge that we have. Practice, practice, practice. So, how do we do this? Well, first of all, you want to make a commitment to yourself. I want to change. I want to become more powerful. I want to do something. And so let's say that something is I want to have a more spiritual presence. Well, you might decide that to make an affirmation out of it. I want to have spiritual practices. I want to do spiritual practices. So maybe you write on a sticky note, I do my spiritual practices daily. And you post that by your door or on your bathroom window or all over your home. And you're reading, I do my spiritual practices daily. Maybe you set up your phone to send you a reminder at 6 o'clock or whatever time makes sense every morning to remind you, I do my spiritual practices. We all can use reminders until we do it enough and it becomes a habit. We don't have to think about it anymore. All of a sudden, we're doing our spiritual practices without thinking. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, we must take the responsibility for our own lives. Isn't that an interesting concept? All must awake to the fact that they have absolute control over their lives and that nothing can happen by chance. So, what's a spiritual soup that we need to marinate in to encourage us to take control over our lives? And what are the ingredients that add flavor, excitement, and depth? Could the soup that we come up with be so good that we want to experience it again and again and again? Well, spiritual practice is our first ingredient in the soup. And you might take note that there's only 4 ingredients that I'm going to be talking about in the soup. So this is going to be easy to remember. Spiritual practice, number 1. Holmes said, spiritual practice, it can take place throughout your entire day. So what is it? It's a whole lot of things. It's a whole bunch of things. Some of them, it's anything that brings you closer to who you are. One with the divine, one with the only thing that exists. And as you get closer, then you can start utilizing some more of those qualities. The qualities of the divine, like abundance, love, power, knowledge, understanding. All of those, they're laid right out for us. So they're there for us to use, to become one with the one. So how do we do this? We can do it by reading. We can do it by listening to music. We can do it by reading books or magazines or whatever. You can watch perhaps an old tape of Reverend Martin. Notice I said an old tape of Reverend Martin, a previous tape that he has done on YouTube. Or you can watch Reverend Michael Beckwith or whoever speaks to you. You're getting some more food, some more knowledge. It's getting reinforced what you can do to maximize your life. For years, I kept a current copy of Science of Mind magazine in my bathroom. Now, I don't know what you do first thing you get up in the morning, but what I do is I go to the bathroom. And so I sat down every morning and I opened up my Science of Mind magazine and I read it and I got good information and things to think about throughout the day. It gave me something positive. The second thing I do for my spiritual practice is I meditate 15 to 30 minutes a day. Again, it's practice. Do it, it becomes easier and easier. The third thing that I do every day is that I pray. It's probably what you do all day long. You just don't know that you're doing it all day long. You know, what are your thoughts? Those are the things that you're creating. So be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of what you're creating. We are creative individuals. The second ingredient would be oneness. Notice the little nod and something appears on there. I think I'm communicating with God. So oneness. Again, God is all that there is. Each one of us is a manifestation of God. We're made from the divine and made with the only thing that existed for the divine to make us, itself. So here's another way to think about it. You know, I was created by my mother and father, just like you. You were created by your mother and father. You know, so they got together in a fun and interesting way, and they each gave part of themselves to manifest me. And just like your folks did, they each gave part of themselves to manifest you, just like Spirit, God, the divine, has done. And we each have all of those qualities of our parents, everything that's in our DNA. Well, remember, our DNA goes way, 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 way back. It goes back to the first human that existed. So we have all of those qualities. Now, regarding oneness, here's something that I think some of the things you'll all appreciate about the oneness. Have you ever been thinking about someone and then that person calls you? Have one mind. Last Sunday, Reverend Martin talked about the reticular activation system, and he talked about habits. Both of those topics I had been working on for a long time, and they're in my talk. Did he look at my notes? One mind. Another example, unbeknownst to me, Patrice was in our backyard and she was talking with a friend on the phone, and she was talking about wanting to change her habit of news watching. Well, at the same time, I was talking with my friend Rick, totally different location, we couldn't hear each other, having the exact same conversation. One mind. So I'm so grateful for all those reminders that I get about the oneness, about my oneness, about our oneness. And it's all about remembering to remember, to become one again with the divine. Utilize is the third ingredient that we're putting into our soup. Use it or lose it. Utilize all the natural laws of the universe. They're all out there. They're just waiting for you to use them. They work even when you don't know that they're working. Kind of like this not working when I started talking. I created that by thinking it, and then it became so. So in order to be able to utilize these laws, we have to know them. And knowledge is available to us through a whole bunch of ways. We can utilize our lending library in the back, our online courses, the courses and seminars that we offer here. It's a lot of places where we can get knowledge. And then the fourth ingredient is persistence. Persistence is the ability to keep working towards a goal despite challenges, and setbacks. So, once you have committed to making something happen, persistence is the key to making that happen. Kind of like the guy with the violin case. Practice, practice, practice. So we have all of these ingredients. We've put them into our spiritual soup. We're allowing it to marinate and marinate and marinate. Now, what do? Use it. Drink from the soup. Remember those 4 ingredients and get out there and let's make it happen.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Spiritual Wisdom Weekly. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on social media at Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living and support our work, including this podcast, at gocsl.org. Until next time, take good care and keep growing in spirit.